Welcome back. Today we're out with my buddy Peter. You've seen him in a couple videos, and we're going to be chasing around some fall walleyes, and I'm going to detail a bunch of bites that go on in the fall, talking through some of these fall walleye patterns. So we're going to get fishing and we'll get right into the details. This one's a little more structure oriented. Ooh, like that. See, there's a big high guy on the structure a little more. We kind of let us start drifting back a little bit so we get a consistent line. Because otherwise you cast kind of like on top of them or beyond them. I don't know, mate. Oh yeah, I think there is. That back one looks bigger. Oh, see him? Yep. Yep. Oh. I almost whiffed on my thing. There's that other one there, so I'm just gonna spot lock. Oh, you bet. Those suspended walleye bites. I will just never get sick of that. Not a big one though. What the heck? Sorry, I'm coming. That other one definitely looked bigger. But man, they just smoke it. One of the things with fall, big baits definitely do the trick. So much fun. Not even that big of a walleye, and that thing still just creamed it. Oh, that's awesome. Whew, first walleye of the day. What a beauty. And so there we go. First fish, and now we're going to talk some of these fall patterns. And the first thing we have to understand about talking fall is a lot of times we have water temps dropping, so that's something we have to keep in mind, but also there has to do some fall turnover. Again, this can be kind of a long, drawn out process. It's not necessarily just going to happen in a day, but that can happen in a variety of stages. I'm not going to go too in depth into that right now, but as these fish, as the temps are dropping, their metabolism is starting to slow down a little bit. So when their metabolism starts to slow down, that means they might not be as active looking for a bunch of small meals like they are maybe in the summertime. They slow down, start looking for maybe one big meal. You know, they're looking for, that's why those big minnows in the fall, big creek chubs, big red tails, that's why those can be so good. That's why I love using these big paddle tails. You know, they're looking for these bigger meals as they slow down preparing for the winter. So we talk locations. That one we caught on some a little bit deeper mid-lake structure, and that's a prime fall bite that happens very consistently, and this is an easy bite to do with forward-facing sonar or without. If you want to check out the video that I did just recently where I talked about finding the sweet spot on structure, that can give you a good indication of spots to try out even if you don't have forward-facing sonar. But a lot of times when I'm working around this mid-lake structure, I am going to be using reaction baits. I'm going to be using drop shots, slip bobbers. Today I'm chasing some of these bigger fish, so I'm using some of those more artificials, big paddle tails. You know, that's one of my favorite bites that I have throughout the year. The nice thing about mid-lake structure is they are relatively stable as far as relatively consistent in an area. They're not going to be kind of roaming around some of these flats or whatever it might be. We're going to go catch another one, talk through the next pattern. Ooh, that one actually looks better. So 40. When you can see that separation with the kind of the tail whack. I'll just try to stay on it here for you. Right about there.
Stop there.
Yep. Should see it. Yep, he sees it. He sees it. He's still following. Keep coming. Keep it coming. Give it a little pump. Oh, like that. Yep, there he is. That took that little pump. Sometimes they love it. I'm going to spot lock us here, so just don't fall in the drink.
All right.
Took that little pump. Seems like a decent fish.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna start going forward, so just don't. That's a solid fish. Oh, I start to see a little, oh, maybe I didn't. That's a decent one, not a giant.
Not big.
It looked bigger on the live scope. Another fish right out here. 25 and a half. Chasing these big walleyes in the fall is so much fun. Big baits, big fish. We're gonna talk through our next pattern. That was literally pretty much the next cast after we caught that other one. And so this one is that mid-lake structure, that hump, and it goes off to kind of like this deep, hard bottom flat. And so that's the next one that we're gonna talk about. For whatever reason, I usually like to try tell the whys behind some of these reasons why these fish are here, but this one I'm not 100% sure. I know there's a lot of bait cruising over these hard bottoms flats, and in the summertime, I like those muddy flats because there's some of those bug hatches going on, so that brings in some of the smaller fish, the perch, the ciscos, and those walleyes will chase for these hard bottoms flats. I don't know why exactly they're relating to these, but there's for sure bait, and these big walleyes are not too far behind. Sometimes they're a little closer to bottom, and you can pull spinners, you can pull some of those things over tops of these hard bottom flats. So I'll often either pull big minnows. If you know there's an area of this hard bottom, you can rig big minnows. If you don't have forward facing sonar, rigging big minnows, and that's such a fun bite because when you start to feel that minnow move, that's going to be your indicator that these fish are chasing. So if these fish are roaming over these a little more, I will like to do a casting bait just so I can keep on them. But again, if you don't have forward facing sonar, or you're just working over these hard bottom flats, drive around with your 2D sonar, identify some of these hard bottom areas. You can see the density with your side imaging and with your down imaging, and then you can find some of these marks relating to some of that. Drag those minnows, pull some spinners. You can even pull some cranks if it's not as deep. Otherwise, you can fan cast, but I have a lot more success pulling spinners or Lindy rigs, especially with some big minnows. So pattern number 2, we're gonna keep fishing, catch another one. We'll be back at you with the next pattern. Kind of want to see more suspended ones. Like, was that a suspended one? Yeah, he doesn't look quite as big. I'm gonna cast on him anyways. Oh, he swung and missed. You see that?
Yeah. Come back for it.
Oh, he swung and missed again. There, you bet. Oh, he's like not far underneath the boat here.
Yeah.
God, all these fish are just so heavy. Not a giant, but still solid. Sorry, I'm trying to get him in the chest cam still. Did I scare you?
Oh, it just popped out.
Oh, it did. Oh, that's actually a decent fish.
Yeah.
There we go. Another beauty. That is one thing about fall walleyes. They just start fattening up, and they are some of the thickest fish of the year. That one again was on that big swim bait, and that's gonna be the next pattern, is suspended walleyes. In the fall, walleyes love to suspend over open water. Sometimes they're related to structure. You'll see them right off the edges of the structure. They're gonna be the same height as the top of the structure that they normally are, maybe it's 25 feet, and they'll go off and on. Some of the presentations that I like for suspended walleyes, number 1 is what I just caught that on. That is the 1/2 ounce smeltinator head with a 4-inch paddle shad. That is by Norfin. Just an absolute deadly combo. I'm going to show you that real quick. So here's that bait right there. Such a fun pattern. This one has seen its better days, but if you glue them, put a dab of super glue on the front of it, it is going to stay on forever. This has caught so many fish, and it's just starting to wear down a little bit. You can just see how durable those plastics are. So that's one of my favorite ones. You can throw like reaction baits at some of these suspended fish as well, and that can be a super effective pattern. I like these a little bit more, and if the fish are a little more finicky, there is nothing better than a jig and crawler, being able to toss that on an 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce jig and just slowly work it over their heads. Sometimes they'll follow, and then you'll get them to bite. Couple awesome presentations for chasing some of these suspended walleyes. Another thing when you are chasing suspended fish, especially with these little bit heavier swim baits, sometimes I'll even go up to a full ounce, 3/4 to a full ounce on those smeltinators, and it's important to have a little bit heavier rod. This is that 7'2", medium heavy, fast action. Talked a lot about this rod throwing these big swim baits. This is by Elliott. Absolutely deadly big swim bait rod. Feels a little bit stiff right away, but then once you actually start fishing with it, you realize how important it is to work these baits correctly with that stiffer rod. So great presentation. This is with the 2000 Piscifun Carbon X2 2000. awesome reel. Honestly, there's times I think I would upsize to a 3,000 size for this, just because getting some of that line out when you're chasing these suspended fish, or if I make a bad cast, I want to get it back in very quickly. So I would upgrade to a 3,000 size sometimes as well for these big swim baits. But we're gonna get back fishing, talk through a few more patterns. They always look bigger when they're out further.
Yeah.
This guy's kind of swimming closer here. He's kind of swimming with us. There, I should get across him. It's gonna be not easy to see on here. There he sees it, yep. Hit immediately. Oh, I didn't get a great hook set in him though. It's not big. Not big, I don't think, unless he's just still swimming with me. Yeah, that guy, as soon as it saw it, just slow rolled it right over its head. It's getting a little bigger maybe. Yeah, as soon as he saw it, he just, thump. Yeah, not big, but decent. I mean, yeah, just when you're chasing these fall walleyes, you know, you're looking for these giants. There we go, another quality fish. Again, when you're chasing some of these suspended walleyes, they're a lot of times the better fish, and you just have these expectations. That was still a great fish. I acted like I was disappointed, but that was still an awesome fish. But when you're chasing some of these bigger fish with these big baits, you're looking for those mid to for sure upper 20s, and but still such a fun pattern here in the fall. And so that kind of leads us into our next pattern. That fish was suspended, but again, we had that steep break, that hump on top. Then we were fishing that flat for a little while. We caught a couple fish on that flat. And now kind of what we're working at, we're actually towards the edge of this flat. And what happens is hard bottom flat and it transitions to that mud. So that is one of my favorite all-time fall walleye. I remember when I first got side imaging and I started dialing in some of these transition, this hard to soft bottom transition. You can see it so easily on your side imaging. Sometimes they'll be right on the transitions closer to bottom. But like that one, it was along that transition. It was relating to that transition, but it was up suspended off bottom. And again, depending on where these fish are related to, a lot of times what I like to do is I'll actually go along with my side imaging and I'll see exactly where that transition is and I'll put waypoints and I'll kind of get a line. So then at times I will, you know, before forward facing sonar days, I would pull spinners right along those waypoints and kind of follow along that. So if you can use your side imaging, mark where that is, pull spinners. Again, another fall classic pattern, rigging those big minnows. Pull that along, or even a jig and minnow. A lot of times jig and minnow is another great fall tactic. If you do have forward facing sonar, you can pitch things like, you know, your reaction baits. You can pitch, you know, jig and crawl. You can pitch some of these big paddle tails like I like to throw. Just a lot of different things that you can do when targeting these transition walleyes. That's a big one. Go ahead, do you see it? 15. Ooh, that one's getting bigger now. I thought it was. I'll just keep you in on it. You're gonna be right on it. So stop it right there. Good.
Oh, he just thumped it right away. Come on.
That might be a pike. That looked long. I think he had it and was swimming with it in its mouth.
I think so too. Weird, because I felt the thump and then it was.
I think it came up and swam with it. This might be a pike. Does it feel heavy? It looked heavy, or it looked long. Oh, I'd take a 40-inch pike, although I don't think it'd fit in this net. That is the thing, when you're targeting with these big paddle tails, man, those big pike love them too. Woo, there's a good run. This is a good fish. That's honestly where it's nice to just have a good reel with a good drag. This is that Carbon X2. It's just a little bit improved even from the Carbon X. And any bit of drag that you can have to help when these fish take these runs like that, whether it's a big walleye or a big pike. Get that head in there. Whoo! God, they're just thick in the fall. These big pike are too. Up and over. Oh no, my net's bending. That's a pig. 42 and a half.
42 and a half.
Oh my goodness, that is a giant. Woo! 42 inches of just fat. That's probably hard to hold that thing up. Here, we'll get a release over here. Woo! Well, that's some adventure right there. Let's go back catch some walleyes. This actually looks decent. I'm gonna let the wind drift me over top of it. We got another little like deep structure here. Yep, geez, smoked it. Oh, I'm at an awkward angle. You see how that thing just smoked it? There's a couple out there. We're kind of back on this deep structure. There's another hump that tops out and it almost looks like 25 or so. Jeez. With how that thing bit, it almost seems like a pike.
They almost surprised you.
Oh yeah, that thing just crushed it. These big swim baits, man, when you get the fish in the right mood, I mean, you can cast on a lot of fish and not get bit. But man, when you get that fish in the right mood, this might be a big walleye. It's kind of acting walleye-ish. I thought how it bit, it was a pike. But man, let's get a 30-inch walleye right after that giant pike. Oh, yeah. Not a 30, but it's good. Nice, you bet. 27-incher. These fall walleyes are so much fun. Right after that giant pike, 27-inch walleye. Huh. Fall walleyes, it's finally here. I tell you what, we've started school now, and it feels so good. Just get a little break. Whew. Get a little break from the first few weeks of school and come out here and catch some fish. But I'm gonna talk through a few of these that I will fish, but they're not necessarily on every lake. And some of these bites aren't gonna be happening out here on this lake, but one is shallow flats. You know, I did a video on that a little bit more in depth last fall. Finding these shallow, especially sandy flats. I'm looking for shallow sandy flats. This bait is cruising up, and often this is even less than 10 feet, and it's easy because you can drive around with your side imaging and these pods of fish stick out like a sore thumb. Sometimes they'll disperse and be in like ones or twos, but a lot of times you're driving over these big expansive flats and you're sometimes S-ing around to try to cover a few more depths, but S-ing around, look for those fish on side imaging. When you see them, then you can stop, drop your live scope down. If you don't have a live scope, forward facing sonar, you can just make casts at them. This is one where I really like to use a jig and minnow, sometimes like a jig and a plastic. I like more of a straight tail plastic for these, not as much of the paddle tail. You know, straight tail plastic, kind of like the eye candy minnow profile. That seems to do better because I can do a little more snap jigging. So I'll do a lot of that, give these little pops with the jig and minnow on these shallow flats. That tends to be a little better presentation for some of those. But again, you're not looking for weedy areas, you're not looking for that during this shallow bite. It's a lot of sand, covering a lot of ground, finding these pods of fish just roaming, chasing this bait. There, it sees it. Get it come up? Yep. We were just cruising around. We were heading over to check out some weeds. That's kind of another fall pattern, is some good weeds. And we were just cruising over there. I was like, you know what, let's take the trolling motor because we might see some fish suspended over open water. And sure enough, we're sitting over 50 feet. That guy was down about 25. Pops right off. I'll show that guy off right here real quick. It's not very big. Oh. Well, now we're gonna make our way over to the weeds. So I'm just actually gonna kind of drive the edges of these weeds and some of these sandy flat transitions and kind of show you a little bit more what we're looking for on the side imaging. So I'll show you this. You can see where it gets really dark. That's that drop off. There's actually a couple rocks. Oh, you can see those shadows right there. That's some good fish, but you can see more of the scattered weeds on in the water column on the side imaging here. I'll kind of switch to that mode again. You can see here we got a little more low-lying weeds. We're out of that scattered weeds. But again, you're still seeing some fish. There's one right there, a couple. And you can see in shallower water like this, those shadows show up just a ton. Again, you're not seeing a lot of these on the side image actually. Even though it's good green cabbage, you can see them on the live scope. There's good green weeds on the live scope. Even as I pan around, you can see some of those good green weeds, but they're so sparse that you're not seeing them. You can see that break line there. Now it kind of levels out. I'll show you that. You can see that steep break where it gets black, and that's that drop off, and then it kind of comes up and levels out. You can actually see some fish again on that break line a little bit. There's some weeds that we just went over. Again, very sparse, so tough to see, but you can almost see, I'll mark that one more time, you can almost see that weed line as it goes, even though it's not super defined because these weeds are so sparse. So we're gonna whip around, try to catch some of those fish. So as you can see, we're kind of cruising on these weed edges. We've been seeing a few kind of pods of fish moving in. One thing I really like about this is sparse weeds. So this is kind of the next pattern we're going to talk about, just fishing some of these weeds. You can see we're just kind of roaming around. Good sparse weeds. You can kind of see fish, like there's one almost right underneath us. I got too much on top of that one. Sometimes you're looking for these patches and they'll be off the edge, but there you can see, you can actually see some fish. There's a few right there. They're just kind of mixed in with these weeds. Yep. There we go. Oh, shoot. I was just slow rolling this eye candy minnow here. And so I'll just kind of continue talking through that as we fish, like looking for these sparse weeds. This one is nice because it's adjacent to deep water, so when I can find those, I like that. But what I look for is these kind of shallower flats that have a little more expansive weeds. And I'm looking for this kind of sparse stuff just because those fish kind of mill around in there. And you can use your live scope, you can use your side imaging. I'll show you some screenshots of both of those to show what you're looking for. And you know, the reason that they're still in here is there's still decent green weeds. As I get further and further in the fall, you know, some of these weeds are gonna die off and then it's not going to be as many fish in there. But when you still have some good green weeds, this is a very good tactic because there's still bait. There's still, ooh, two in a row, just a little short biting. You can see a couple more milling around in there. And I went to a 1/4 ounce jig, downsized a little bit with that eye candy minnow. Again, like I said, I feel like that profile gets through these weeds a little better. And another thing that's a great tactic for this is slip bobbers and crawlers, even slip bobbers and minnows as it gets later into the year. If I had a little weed on it when I casted. But slip bobber, you can see even just on that, some of that good green weed. Another good tactic for working these weeds are drop shots. That's a classic. You can see a few more right on, almost on the edge of these weeds. See those 40, 50 feet? I say we just both launch a cast over there.
See what happened. Crossed you.
Hey, there we go. There we go. Be a Walter. It's a Walter. Not a bad one either. You bet. Not a bad fish. Decent fish too. Sometimes we'll get, whoa, you can just toss it right back in. Perfect. Sometimes in those weed fish, you'll see some pods of smaller fish, but that was an okay fish. You will also see some of those big singles milling around those weeds. We find some of our biggest fish in shallow weeds throughout the summer, but you have to be pretty meticulous with how you're working through them very slowly. So the other thing I'm going to talk about really quickly is finding current. That's another kind of pattern. If you find any of these things that we've talked about today adjacent to some current, or sometimes current is the only pattern, even some pinch point or a river flowing in, finding some current in the fall can be another key pattern to just kind of attract some bait and attract some fish. So fall time, a fun time to target big fish using big baits, super fun bite. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.